of desertification. Interaction with wildfires. Pastoral wildfires are an established tradition in several parts of the Mediterranean. In Greece, for example, a large proportion of fires every year is caused by pastoralists. And the social impact, we mean that social factors related to social devaluation of the pastoral profession, and the cost labor sometimes is high, so certainly there is a limit of farming activity in the future. Some conclusion that we draw from this research is that sheep and goat basically breedings play a role which has a key importance for the environmental protection, meaning that the natural maintenance of less fertile areas, there's an opportunity for biodiversity and preservation of sensible ecosystem, of water quality. There is a chance for preservation of soil erosion, floods, and so on. Traditional grazing also, using sheep, can ensure the sustainable management of these sites. And flocks of sheep can promote also the dispersion of species between individual areas. Also, the current trend of organic farming may offer a viable solution to the continuity of traditional farms. Some suggestion for the future is that to create, first of all, a favorable condition for the farmers to have access to additional source of income, because agriculture itself is has a lower income in comparison with other activities such as tourism. Then to promote the quality component through the integrated management of the remaining production and the certification of traditional products. These are suggestion also. And where necessary, programs of extensification of production can be expanded, or rural also development projects should be implemented. And this can aim at decreasing the transport cost of products, especially between the mainland and the islands, or advertising and marketing the products, preserving and protecting scarce animal races, and encouraging ecotourism or agritourism. So, thank you very much. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you so much. Again, an interesting presentation. My keywords, landscape types in Greece, the close connection between sheep farming and landscape, or the interaction between them, and the suggestions. These were the most important words for myself. So, thank you so much. And the next presenter is Dr. Leonora boneva, Senior Curator, National History Museum of Sofia, Bulgaria, and entitled Transhumant Shepherd's Heritage, From Whom? From Nostalgia to Eco-touristic Business. Please, Nora. Press it.
Okay, but I would like to see the screen also.
But you can come here as well. Maybe it's better. Oh, yeah, yes, right.
What was F5? Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Summing up the personal experience gained in the Canepal project survey, I would like to share with the colleagues with whom we have been working together for the last 4 years, as well as with the large project audience, some ideas about the characteristics of the shepherd's heritage as seen by the perspectives of the museum studies and heritology. First of all, it seems to me important to share that besides the opposition between old and new, i.e. tradition, innovation, we should think about the not very clearly defined, although very important space, where the change of traditional forms and their inevitable adaptation to the social and economic macro framework take place. It is in this space that most of the objects of our Canepal research project are situated. The objects associated with the nostalgia for the glorious past of the transhumans, but also with the challenges of the present days, which are dominated by consumption of short-term touches to the eternal values. It happened? Oh, okay, thank you. The question, okay, I see. The question is whether the forms that today look similar to those at the beginning or in the middle of the 20th century are actually the same. A priori, the answer would be no. However, in meeting with the impartial evidence of photographic documentation, we would again spontaneously say yes. Yes, this will not be our final conclusion. Yet, this will not be our final conclusion, because what was once obligatus life and production practice now in most cases is only a deliberately and intentionally preserved heritage. In the classical trial of past, present, future, the preservation of that heritage, its recognition and possible isolation are undoubtedly taught as futuristic activities that create in the present a new products whose roots are recognized in the past. The more distant, the more prestigious, according to the school-formed idea of the general public. In our study, however, it is upside down. The closer, the more optimistic the pastoral legacy seems, loaded with opportunities for revitalization. Again, a but, because this heritage is multi-layered. A millennial saga of mutual involvement and affection between man and sheep on the move, while changing grazing land along with the seasons to provide food, living on the border between nature and culture, between society and isolation, manifested in varying degrees of intensity. This culture is stable and time-tested, making use of all natural resources and entire vitality, creatively, and intelligence of the traditional man. Who creates heritage and what's heritage? A possible definition would read a phenomenon or artifact whose natural users are not active, whose social and physical context has been changed, and which under public consensus or personal belief are recognized as bearers of values that are important in the contemporary social or physical context. In valorization of the heritage, inevitably a decontextualization takes place, followed by a recontextualization of its second social life. In the case of the pastoral legacy, the physical context can remain, which usually happens in case of the pastoral legacy, the physical context can remain unchanged with respect to the place of origin, but to what extent this is an illusion we will realize through the example of the same landscape of the respective village area or of the gradual isolation in important segments of the shepherd's intangible culture, such as the pastoral instrumental playing, which has almost lost its production function of keeping the flock and passed to institutions promoting folk music as part of the repertoire of instrumental orchestras and groups. The process of valorization of the heritage can be both spontaneous and cultivated, with the entire convention of terms, and that while being aware of the growing trend of turned into a cultural product as a result of targeted policies and factors of different levels. Before that, however, comes the general question of theoretical and applied nature, as those involved in the scholarly field who would say what to do with the heritage, who will make use of it, and for what. What did we see during our field observations and meetings? First, preserved is a legacy which is handed down naturally. Its uploaders are shepherds infected in childhood by the shepherd's occupation. Legacy which is alive in the practice of people who are engaged in sheep farming and in processing their products. Legacy which is alive in everyday life of the people of the villages once occupied in transhumance, in their cuisine, cosmetics, etc. Legacy which is common among the rest of society, usually already tested by older people and now widely available via internet, for example. Of special interest are the sheep products as an essential part of the so-called folk medicine. Second, the heritage collected and discussed by the researchers. What sort of man was the old transhumant shepherd? Experienced, and he knew well what. And there is a long list of his knowledges, which I am not going to read: the temper of the sheep, the pasture, to predict weather changes, how to milk, how to shear, how to plague bagpies, how to deal with robbers, how to enlarge the flock, and how to take care of his own interests, how to mark the sheep, how to protect and heal them. The contacts of our team with the heirs of the old transhuman shepherds were more than interesting. What struck me the most, that I met an unexpected confirmation of what the local historian of Momčilovci, Father Canef, this is a village in Smolen region in the heart of the Rhodope mountain, had written in his time, that folk songs are a kind of reports transmitting events from the beginning of the century, which are kept alive and happened not in some obscure legendary past, but very recently. This is why I was so entranced by Gkoltsiou from Momčilovci. This is that guy. He liked to say that he was almost 19 years old. He was born in 1926 and was one of the last living transhuman shepherds. He was Maleshina, that means helper, apprentice, for several summers in the brief attempt to revive the transhuman husbandry between the Rhodopes and the Aegean lowlands in the early 40s. He was born just as his uncle Stoyanke Haya, as well as some of other associates, died of fever in the winter pens of the shepherds from Gorno de Rekyoi village, this is the former name of Momčilovci, in Xanthi. Immediately, a song on the unlucky event was created, and the newborn nephew was given the name of his uncle. And also the fact that the shepherds had led such a Spartan life impressed me very deep. Gkoltsiou proved to be a generous and hearty source on that matter too. All songs tell us that shepherds are brave fellows, and that despite the very frugal nutrition diet, the main food of the shepherds on the move, being the winter or summer, was polenta. They had bread only when the sheep pens were very close to the village, or when went home for the mayor holidays or other family events and customs. Meat is served on the offering days, kurbans, when even the poorest shepherd traditionally dedicates a sheep from his flock as a gratitude for getting rid of some mishaps or sickness that he personally or his family had met with. What would be the profile of the modern shepherds or owners of flock in the Rhodope Mountains? Two cases were studied by us, the Danchev's farm in Momčilovci and then of the Kihayovs near Devi in the Smolen province. Both have transhuman roots. One of the two is the grandson of the famous Transhumant and the ancestor of the other, as his surname implies, were occupied in sheep farming, because the Kehaya is the rich sheep owner and organizer of all activities concerning the flock, hiring shepherds, marketing the output, and negotiated the regulations with the owners of the lowland pastures and the state authorities. Austrian's ancestors had 2,500 sheep. Some other flocks reached the number of 5,000. Today, the scale is different. The Danchevs and the Kehayovs now have 10 times less. It is no longer a matter of industry, but of conservation of traditional livelihood, of profit, which at least provides the support of the farmers. The tasks are directly related to heritage, preservation of local breeds, and regeneration of landscape, cleaning the undergrowth. Both these activities are subsidized by European programs, but these are not easily earned money. The farmers are educated and modern-minded people, apparently intending to hand down lasting interest to their sons, who, just like in the old times, are involved in the family business at a very young age and study biological, zootechnical, and veterinary disciplines at the university. The Danchev sons are registered under the Young Farmer Program of the Ministry of Agriculture. Their output is sold to local residents on requests and demand. The tourism services are one of the forms of supporting not only the Kehayov's livelihood, but in general the subsistence of the population in the Rudap Mountains. Arranged are guest houses, organized are tourist centers and guides, fishing, skiing. Yet people in the mountains are in a very critical situation as to the maintaining their standard of living. But they are long-lived. A 35-year study of the Rudap longevity covering only 90 years old people shows that the population of this region occupies by longevity the first place in Bulgaria and a very advanced position in the world. The eco and cultural tourism, the Rudap mountains are a place rich in archaeological sites. Also, is making a concerted effort to develop both on municipal and personal levels. The main question is what heritage from the time of transhumans we meet as active in the lives of the sheep farmers and the people of Momčilovci, whose ambition to become an emblem of the old Rudapian pastoralism increased for the village can largely be seen as representative of sheep herding as the primary economic activity of the whole area. As you are following my picture, I'm comparing the old pictures with the contemporary way of producing. Let's say this is the bronza, the famous cheese, also well known in Greece and I suppose everywhere on the Balkans. We think of it roots. If we think of it roots, we will certainly find live evidence or evidence of the traditional Rudap shepherd tangible and intangible culture that has retained its nature after the innovated references. The shepherd's crook, the string, the Z of bells, and the big tumbelecs these are kind of bells also that are suspended by the neck of their kitches. The goat's leaders have not changed their function and nature as an expression of the shepherd's prestige. Not to forget the importance of the good dogs. This, on the right side, is this brave young man, Kehayov, who is doing one of the best farms in Bulgaria. The style of the old masters is also manifested in the sheepfolders of the Danchevs and Kehayovs, renovated large buildings from the time of the socialist cooperative farm, which differ from the classical structures by their size, as well as in the wooden vessels in which the milk is processed and which are made even today by a few hereditary masters. The representation of this culture is unthinkable without the cheverme, the traditional lamb roasted on spit, which today has become a symbol of anti-touristic attraction. The cultural calendar of the former transhumant villages largely follows the traditional shepherd's feast in honor of patron saints, who in their turn are bound to appropriate production moments. A specific social practice has developed. One could say a certain culture of kurbans and ritual celebration. In the village of Momčilovci and its surrounding area, there are 26 chapels which are objects of reverence and care by the local people. The holidays with offerings in honor of the respective saint reproduce old customs, and boiled meat, fresh cheese, ritual bread are distributed for health among the villagers after the church service. The ritual bread, particularly that prepared on Gergovden, is very popular as a specific type of plastic art also, and shown at the exhibition organized by the Sheep Farmers Gathering, for example, where we see a wide variety of decoration. However, the central celebration for Momčilovci is the day of Saints Constantine and Helena, patrons of the local church, one of the earliest in the Rudovs, built in the 1836. These pictures I took on the last holiday of the village, and on the left side you see some guests from Greek who have a business interest there, and on the right side the horo dance which didn't cease all the day. Very important in this festival is the participation of the folklore group, and naturally, the traditional costume remained active not only for the folk groups, but for the production of clothing, which has been deliberately maintained, as for example in the complex in Zlatograd, not only for the locals, but also for the purposes of tourism. At the presentation of the Canepal project at the second and third National Festival of Sheep Farmers gave us the chance to meet a young man, a great admirer of the Rudop traditional costume that he wore with a particularly dignified feeling, an avid patriot, former museum assistant, and now who has become now a master cutler. He got married at the beginning of the summer and did a very impressive wedding, I would not exactly ceremony, but it was a reconstruction after a very famous Bulgarian film, Time of Violence, about the Islamization of the Rudop Mountains in the 17th century, shot after a very famous documentary novel, and we were thinking in so let's say in theoretical way, in what way in theoretical terms, in what way the people are constructing their identity and the possibility to show their love, their affiliation to the Rudop Mountains everywhere in the country. This example of animating the legacy just for the soul deserves a more detailed analysis that is beyond our text. Here in conclusion, we would like to make an attempt at relating the activity of the Canepal project on the research and systematization of the heritage associated with the shepherd's culture to a basic setup of in heritology, according to which heritage protection is implemented through the following forms: documentation. It implements archive, books, image, sound, and video recording. In situ life, a protected natural area, reserve, eco-museum. In situ dead, a village museum, historical building, open-air museum. In situ life, a zoological or botanical garden, and some open-air museums. And in situ dead, museums. I would prefer to use not dead, but herbarized culture in the museum, because it was deliberately put in this position. What happens in our case? Thanks to the institutions, co-organizers of the Canepal project, and the associated partners, we have covered the whole scheme. The research has created a huge archive. In situ life, there are several national parks like Hortobagi, Tatra National Park, the Eco-museum, and the Eco-museum in Marchese. In situ that, what came to my mind was the listed architectural site, as an example for listed architectural site, the Devil Bridge in Bulgaria. And in situ life, I would mention Hungarian Open Air Museum. I'm not sure if you will agree with me, but I think that you belong to that group because you are developing a lot of life in your museum. And in situ that, all the big list of museums which took part in our project. I wanted it only to make a hint, to hold the big scale, to hold the impressive interpretation of heritage and collection of data, of images of any kind, of info, etc., done, and systematization, of course, done under our project. Because of the large institutional and professional diversity of actors in the Canepal project, museums, universities, non-governmental research organizations supported by educators, educational institutions, public organizations, and with a clear focus on the objects of research, field objects, flock and farms, cultural events, places, heritage protection centers, the project results are undoubtedly contribution not only to optimization of the economic perspective of sheep farming and the associated culture, but they also provide the basis for a serious analysis